Hello.
Hello, what's happening?
Just enjoying some rare Melbourne sunshine.
I know, yeah, it's beautiful. I took advantage of it. Went for a walk earlier this morning, and it's pretty nice.
It
What
is.
do you
I
think?
don't quite know what to do with it.
I know. We just need to be appreciative that it's there.
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah. Definitely thankful.
yeah, Ben, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate your time, and I know you're a busy man behind the scenes and even in front of scenes. And yeah, thanks for that. And how's you and your family doing during these interesting times?
Yeah, we're doing pretty well, thanks. Definitely going a little stir crazy occasionally in the small apartment contained there 24/7. So the 1 hour a day of release time out in the wide world is definitely appreciated. But yeah, look, we're going okay. It's crazy times for everyone, so definitely ups and downs. There's good weeks, and then there's other weeks where you're just kind of like questioning what happened. But thankfully, all family and friends are all good. So
Good. That's good to hear. And look, I think it's these times make you really appreciate what you have. And
yeah,
it goes from simply a roof, or having a job, or still having a job, or even living in a
definitely,
country like Australia where there's still some subsidies and all of that. But yeah, I'm
yeah.
glad to hear that you're doing well. And uh, just to get the ball rolling. And yeah, I mean, here we go. Some compliments towards your way. He is an amazing guy indeed. Could you kindly tell us a bit more about how you started your coffee journey?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's a pretty classic pathway. I think a lot of
I
people,
like
I'm
classics.
sure, that dial in are going to be along a similar path. I was going through university. I grew up on the west coast of Australia, so I was going through university in Perth, and just decided I needed a little bit of extra money to kind of pay the bills and kind of get my way through uni. And cafes looked like a super fun environment to work in. I'd never kind of really, yeah, I hadn't really worked in them much before, or worked in hospitality really much before. But decided that looked like a good place to try and earn a few extra bucks. So I applied for a Gloria Jeans store, one of the busiest ones actually in Perth, and got that, and that was a really great experience. Yeah, I kind of worked at a couple of Gloria Jeans stores for a few years, and yeah, got some really great experience for taking someone who knows absolutely nothing about making coffee or working in a hospitality environment through to being able to operate a machine and deal with customers. It was pretty good. So did that for a few years, and got more and more into the coffee side of things. And I was kind of spending my spare time back then, you know, doing a few little experiments in the cafe, and kind of reading a lot online. And so this was kind of early 2000s, and
Hmm.
um, and so there was a coffeegeek.com and Coffeed were two of the big kind of online forums back in the days,
That's right.
real chat forums. They were the hot
Yeah,
thing. I feel
yeah.
like now I'm showing my age.
That's good.
But yeah, look, I was spending a lot of time just talking with a lot of other coffee coffee passionate people all around the world on these forums, as they were trying to experiment with grinders and equipment and coffee, and learning from each other. And then I'd come back into work and try and find how to incorporate all of that. And obviously, a franchise has got particular limitations about what you can change. um, and I found one top place in Perth that kept being mentioned as, you've got to, if you're into coffee, you got to go there. And it was a little espresso bar called Core Espresso. And so I went down there one week and ended up just hanging out there as a customer, half of my week, just over the bar, kind of tasting things, talking. And eventually they're like, all right, have a job, have a job. And yeah, so I kind of got into, that was my dive into specialty coffee. And they were using Five Senses coffee over there, who is the roastery that I work for now. And that was my first experience with freshly roasted coffee, and well made. You know, they were rocking out a Lamazocco Linea, the kind of classic, and then they actually had the Lamazocco Swift grinders, which I don't know if you've kind of played around with them, but they've actually obviously just recently released the latest iteration of that. But super fresh grind, super fresh roasted, and yeah, definitely started me along the path of quality coffee.
Yeah, and I mean, I think often when we speak about commercial, and I was having this conversation with Andre Ehrman, and we're talking about, I think there's so many pros and cons. You know, there's actually a few pros, which is, you know, the structure, and they teach you, and there's some sort of, you know, like the work ethics and the flow. And I think we tend to demonize that, but ultimately, you know, there's still things that we can learn from that side, whether it's, you know, HR or career development or a whole bunch of things. So then what was sort of your next move? Now you kind of touching, you know, your
Had my first taste.
Testing the waters.
Yeah. Well, so I, after working at Core Espresso for a while, which was a very small espresso bar, it was actually a foyer espresso bar in the Perth CBD. And we had 2 espresso machines, 2 Swifts, and we were kind of cranking out coffees. But I kind of really wanted to try out the competition side of things. As a lot of people are like, oh, what is that? What is that? And this is pretty early back in the days. I feel like it's kind of 2004, 2005. So I've been in kind of coffee for a fair while now. But yeah, I decided I wanted to get into competitions. And because Five Senses was working with the cafe, I was like, I kind of said to them, all right, hey guys, I'm keen to do this. Can you give me some help? And this is all I know about competitions. And so we did a little bit of training, but no one had ever seen a competition before. And all we could find online, obviously there's no YouTube video recordings of the World Barista Champs back in those days. It was kind of pretty early on, was the score sheet. No rules and regulations. We just found the score sheet. And so I prepared everything on how we were going to do this, and I got all of my answers ready for the potential questions that a judge might ask me. And then I flew to Sydney to compete. It was actually one of the early Danes Barista Championships, their in-house competitions that they ran. I flew to Sydney and very quickly found out that the judges, certainly back in those days, didn't ask you any questions. They were stone-faced, super serious judges, and it was all up to you to have a speech prepared, which I did not have prepared. So I proceeded to speak for about 16 and a half minutes, flat out, non-stop, and definitely crashed and burned, which was a great experience. But yeah, so I had some experience with competition then, which was kind of fun and definitely opened my eyes. But I kind of got to the point of finishing my university degree, which I really enjoyed. But at the same time as I was finishing that, I got offered an opportunity with Five Senses to open a training school in Perth, so a coffee training school. So it was kind of with myself and the crew from Core Espresso and Five Senses, and that was kind of the idea, was to bring some more coffee knowledge and education to people to support this kind of burgeoning third wave.
And what degree did you get? Like what did you study?
I studied film and multimedia. So I kind of pursued down that path and then went in a completely different direction with coffee.
and, like, because I think like you say, it's quite a common story, but I think I don't know why this day and age, obviously depending on culture and financial situations of people, but it's quite difficult to go and say, stuff you, mom and dad, or grandpa or whatever. I'm dropping out of school and I'm going to become a barista. Even though now it can be seen as cool, it's still not considered a career path. And yet in coffee, there might not be the trillions of dollars in, compared to, I don't know, AI or, the technological world, but there's still career path for any type of jobs. You don't need to be just,
Sure.
a barista. What sort of words would you have, or how was your transition for those people out there looking to start to be, hey, you know what? I'm done with the forums, I'm done with the blogs. I just actually want to go for it.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it is building up real experience as well, that getting some time, a lot of people talk about getting time just behind the machine and understanding that flow. I mean, a lot of it, I think, does depend on where you want to end up, if you have an idea of where you want to end up. And I know you've talked a lot about in the past of there's obviously such a wide variety of coffee related careers out there. It's not just barista or cafe owner, roaster, importer, or all of the associated media world around it, obviously. So there's a lot of different options, and where do you want to go kind of maps out what experience would be good to get under the belt. But yeah, so I think look, getting coffee experience in a cafe is I think just it's an invaluable education in a whole range of different skills and perspectives, and ultimately, it's been super helpful for me. I'm not behind the bar at all anymore, but that experience of what is required from baristas and cafe owners in order to successfully execute the end of this entire value chain and talk with the customer, it really definitely informs kind of all of what I do now.
And also, I think for people in general, it gives you that structure and it gives you those foundations about people skills. Because often we, sure, the recipe is cool, the latte art is cool, but I think ultimately everyone should start from a cafe experience, whether it's washing dishes or being on the floor, just to sort of understand. Because if you don't like people, yeah, you can become a roaster. I give you that, but still, you wouldn't be able to enjoy the full experience of coffee, because it's just made out of people. Ultimately.
I'm sure some roasters enjoy people as well. But
I remember at Toby's once. I was they made us do a little induction, and I was roasting with one of the roasters on just a little 5 kilo. I mean, it's not little, but it's little for their roaster in there. And after a while, I looked at Josh and was like, okay, so what now? It's like, we're here, we just wait. And I was like, okay. I could not do this for 8 hours. We need roasters for sure.
It's definitely a different pace.
Yes. And just for some context, what's your day-to-day, and what do you do for Five Senses, and what do you love the most out of the role? Because it seems like you enjoy it.
The day-to-day question is it's a difficult one to answer. I wear lots of different hats. So, and obviously, for just like with everyone else, our lives and our day-to-day has been pretty turned on its head in the past 6 to 8 months. So what I was going to be doing is very different to what I'm currently doing. But look, I guess I handle a lot of our brand communication, and so the conversation out from marketing and what we talk about with our coffees, and kind of that connective tissue between the coffee team, the coffee department, and our kind of account managers and the crew who look after our wholesale customers and domestic and online. So I tend to focus a lot on our events and our kind of bigger coffee projects, as they were. So when MICE is on, that's kind of my baby. If we do pop-ups or other events, that's kind of what I do. And then, so yeah, day to day, it's really mixed. It's everything from, helping introduce new coffee products. Like we're just bringing out the Peak water jug from Maxwell Colin Dashwood. So kind of like getting that all set up and understanding how it's slotting into our system. There's a bit of writing, a little bit of kind of strategy, a little bit of systems. It's a range of different things that I do.
It's a range.
But predominantly I'm in I'm the coffee person within our senior management team. So kind of I help direct the coffee parts through all the business. Very vague question. A lot of stuff.
Good. That's good. A lot of stuff. And look, as long as it involves a little bit of Adrian here and there, it's good. A big shout out
That's
to
so
Adrian. Yeah, I miss him. And
Me
you
too.
sort of, you actually hinted a word before, specialty. And specialty has become such a tricky word. In your words, what do you think about the Melbourne coffee scene in particular? Pre-COVID, let's say.
Pre-COVID. Well, I mean, I guess in terms of your question about what is specialty, there's been a lot of debate over the past, few years in particular around it. I mean, I think the Melbourne coffee scene is pretty incredible. We as is actually a lot of the Australian coffee scene, and we are definitely in a bubble of in the sense of our own kind of consideration of ourselves, but also in terms of how lucky we are as well. I think we kind of tend to get a little bit, when I talk with some of my friends overseas who are working coffee companies or cafes. I was just talking with James Hennebury, who runs Roslyn. He owns Roslyn Coffee in London, and he used to work for us here in Melbourne, but he's opened that cafe. And just talking with him, and he was reflecting on just how lucky we actually are in Australia to have so many great quality cafes. And we're kind of a little spoiled for choice. But certainly that doesn't come without its challenges when you talk about things like specialty and just it as a word or as a movement or however you want to talk about it, that there's definitely specialty coffee has become so popularized that people are jumping on that bandwagon to, it looks like specialty coffee, but maybe the experience that we have isn't quite there. But I think that's just this part of the journey of that,
Yeah, and I think I'm gonna go a little bit unorthodox here a bit. I also think that COVID may have awakened us, or it could be a good wake-up call, because, for instance, if there's one thing that Sydney has been dominating across the years is their takeaway trade, right? So their takeaway is just, they got the system, it's such a strong takeaway hub. And I think that Melbourne has found itself in a position where there were some shops that were used to a little bit of takeaway. I mean, of course it's CBD, but in the suburbs, there's a bit of suffering when it comes to the people who have less of a system when it comes to takeaway, or whether it's your online ordering or your e-commerce setup. How important is for you in general? But obviously, you look after 5 senses. Let's call it wholesale partners. How important is for coffee shops to sort of be trained not just about coffee, but also to have a good understanding on the fact that, it's a competitive market and you need to be prepared to kind of times like this too.
Yeah, it's critical. Obviously, times like this are hopefully not that frequent, and what people need to do with these kinds of situations is pretty unique. But I think, it does really come back down to this situation. If consumers and coffee lovers are kind of being more selective about where they spend their money and where they want to go out for a coffee, it's really going to start putting the pressure and honing in on the key kind of experience there, which is, yes, part of it is definitely the coffee and the coffee quality, but part of it is definitely the service quality and the relationship, and the value that you're kind of adding as a hospitality professional on top of purely the cup of coffee. So I think that's really drawn a lot of focus in as people kind of are becoming more and more community minded. Hopefully that'll continue past COVID.
Absolutely, and I think because I've seen a good friend of mine, he just purchased a cafe literally a month ago, so in the midst of it, and but he, he's from Sydney and he's done this at least 12 times before this, and he's actually doing super well. I think that there's an element for it. I think often we romanticize the idea of opening a coffee shop or talking about it, but unfortunately there is a cold-hearted spreadsheet that no one wants to talk about. There is, it's still a business, and it's still quite a risky business in Melbourne. I think 2018 statistics was, what was it? out of 10, only 4 coffee shops would survive in the first 12 months. And out of the 4 surviving, only 2 will make it to the following 12 months. That was 2018. Yeah. That's a survival rate of 20%. So I think it's interesting. What do you think that drove this aspect of romanticizing the idea of like, you know what, I'm gonna open a coffee shop. I think it's gonna be okay. You know, I've done smashed avocados at home for, you know, myself or the kids or whatever.
Yeah. Look, I think I think it has changed a little bit in the past few years, because I would have used to say that the barrier to opening a cafe is really low, you know, generally, or the barrier for people getting into hospitality was relatively low. And so you saw the transition, you know, you'd often hear about and meet people who are like, yep, no, I've had no hospitality experience. I'm a retired accountant and I want to do this because it sounds really nice and I love going to cafes. So there was one story there. And then on another level, kind of like to your point about romanticizing it, if you're a coffee professional and you've been a barista and you know all about extraction ratio, you know, brewing ratios, extraction levels, you know, all about equipment and flavor. And then you're like, cool, so I'm going to open a cafe. And as you said, there's that whole other aspect to that conversation, which is about the business management, about the people management, about the money management that maybe people don't have experience with. So I think kind of back to your other question about what advice I'd have for people who want to take that dive is definitely about getting experience in the areas that you know you'll need to you'll need support on. And sometimes that's actually not the coffee area. That might be the area that you're the most experienced in. But what you really need is accounting or marketing kind of experience, or people management experience. Because obviously, unless you're running a small espresso bar, you know, by yourself or with a couple of people, you've got a team and you've got to, you know how to manage them well. So yeah, I think that the barrier to entry is a lot more challenging now, as our expectations or the consumer expectations and the level of standard has been, you know, has risen a lot. So it's like what the fit out costs are and the equipment and full kitchens and everything else. I think that starts going, hey, if you're going to jump in, it's kind of saying, well, you're pretty committed. You've raised a fair bit of capital to get this going.
Yeah, and which you raised, well, 3 points in that sentence. I mean, first, I think that the quality is going to have to be even more important now, even with coffee, because people have been brewing at home, they've been stuffing up, they've been making horrible coffee and start looking up how to make it better, and they are making it better. So now they're going to start, I think, preferring certain places over others.
Yep.
The other side is the capital. I think if you got deep pockets, then yes, you can also, you know, you can have the big kitchen if you don't know how to cook. You can have a bigger space if you don't know how to manage people, if you hire the right people with the right salary, but it's big pockets, and not deep, big pockets, like a volcano crater pockets. Otherwise, I think it's always been fascinating, you know, talking to people, consulting, or when people would show me, you know, different options for leases, you know, shops, and everybody was showing me the big shops, and I would ask, do you know how to cook? And they're like, nope, but I know how to make coffee. I'm like, okay, why do you need this gigantic kitchen? Like, it's a big gamble, because then staff is one of the major components of a coffee shop and one of the major challenges. And if your chef doesn't rock up on, I don't know, January 1st on your, you know, one of the craziest possible days, or Mother's Day or whatever, what you gonna do? If you don't know how to cook. And I think that's interesting. And like you said, third point, I think the overall experience, people have certain expectations. 100%.
Yeah, and I think that that's actually probably where the room is for people to explore more, is what those experiences are. And yes, you can have the 100-seater cafe fully fully fleshed out and big investment. But to the same extent, smaller neighborhood places and places that have just got great service and great connection with their local community can still be really successful and have a great following. And in fact, I think, in Melbourne with the CBD closed down and people kind of sticking to their 5 kilometre radius, they're really finding that, suburban cafes are actually, really flourishing.
And I think also to that, like, it's very interesting. I think that what I'm seeing, I'm not sure where you are, but I also love to see those cafe owners that for many years they were like, no, I've done this for 15 years. I know my stuff. I don't need to change anything. And all of a sudden they start having the single origin offering or the little retail shelf, which is cool, which is good. And I'm also curious actually to see what is the next person bringing in to the table of new, because at the end of the day, the next shop that's going to be opening in 2021, there's going to be, I think, a need for something fresher and, a fresh outlook. I know that we all say, oh, well, but what you going to do? Well, but then people have been doing it for the past 10 years. You can really see, you have seen since 2004 or early 2000s, you've seen the evolution of coffee from Perth to Melbourne to Sydney. Interesting. Speaking of 2004, the one video that was probably available was the Team Wendelbo finals. A gem of a video to see actually how it's changed the whole competition. Anyway, thought from before.
Huge changes to the competition.
Yeah. We kind of reached the halfway mark, and we got a ritual question, the out of the box question, which maybe you'll be ready for it. But if you could, who would you like to have dinner with? And it can be anyone, doesn't have to be coffee, whoever you want.
Who would I like to have dinner with?
And I'm not sure if you muted your microphone, or maybe it's on my end.
Can you hear me now?
A little bit. I'll crank the volume up. It's fine. All right.
Okay. You got me now?
I got you.
Okay. Who would I like to have dinner with? I would love to have dinner with Anthony Bourdain, if that was possible. Unfortunately, never possible. But I think that would be a really interesting. I just love that experience. He was someone that, definitely I had a big appreciation for a long time. And I think a lot of the way that he talked about food and people and cultures was in a very similar vein to how I kind of feel about what attracts me to coffee and that kind of conversation. And obviously, can you imagine having dinner with him? It'd be, you'd have this huge feast, would probably get a little rowdy, and you'd have a lot of fun though. But I think, there was definitely a kind of a humility and a love for people about him that I'd love to, just hear more about. So I think that's who I'd enjoy having dinner with.
You were prepared. I'm just trying to figure out if it's my side or your side.
Is the audio a little sketchy still?
Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure if it's coming from the microphone of your phone or your headset. That's my suggestion.
How about I'll take my headset off and we'll see. How's that?
It's similar, but maybe it's my phone because some reason when I get anyway, we'll figure. I can still hear you. Just need to be closer to you. Okay. If everybody else can hear you, then it's just me. I think Anthony Bourdain would have been an interesting dinner for sure. But you were ready for that question.
I was. Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. Not many are, which is good. So we sort of spoke about Melbourne and kind of what it takes to open a cafe and these many aspects. Well, if Andrea can hear us, then it's just me on my side. That's good.
Okay. Good to hear.
Thanks, Andrea, for the feedback. So now I kind of want to talk a bit more about the people behind coffee. I think that, coffee is excellent and everything. And there's, Melbourne, we've done such a good job about, bringing the coffee right up here, the go out for coffee and the coffee experience. I think that we might have the next step to bring more awareness towards the many people behind coffee, because it's not just about enjoying our coffee tour, because we have coffee tour for people who don't know, but Melbourne is actually coffee tour where, they take you to all the cool coffee shops. But I think that we have probably a responsibility to sort of now go, okay, people know that we got good coffee, a good coffee experience in Australia wide. I think, would be fair to say that maybe it's time to kind of narrow down on, hey, without, this person and this person and this person, you couldn't drink what you're drinking every single day twice?
Yeah. Like, are you talking in terms of the rest of the people involved in producing coffee?
Yeah, especially from origin.
That huge, that huge population who, I mean, look, definitely that is one of the big defining challenges of the coffee world, and certainly the specialty coffee world in particular. Obviously I'm pretty passionate about specialty coffee, so that's kind of where my focus kind of lies originally. But certainly us collectively working towards a kind of a sustainable future where coffee production is actually a worthwhile endeavor for everyone involved, is something that we've all got to work towards. And that definitely comes home to roost in the customer experiences here in Australia. And when you talk about the opportunity for cafes in 2020 and 2021 and beyond, it really is about how, it's an opportunity and it's a challenge of how we increase the value for consumers and how we support that kind of broader movement, in terms of getting,
I think I like the word that you used. I think it's also an opportunity, going back to what you're going to do differently. Because I think I was trying to gauge with people today. I went for a bigger walk than usual. And I was trying, even at calls, I've always tried to look at people and I'm fascinated by people. I'm trying to figure out whether mannerism is going out the window because people justify being a little bit ruder because they feel entitled to so, because they're grumpy about the whole situation, or they are lazy about saying thank you and please. And I wonder with the coffee shop scene how that is going to pan out, because I think that some people are craving the connection with humans. And I think if we could provide an experience where we not only connect one-on-one, but also connect you to the many faces behind that cup of coffee, it could be a much more, wholesome experience, perhaps.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, this is an increasing trend for consumers and all of us with beyond just coffee, is where does our product come from? Where does our produce come from? How was it made? And what were the costs that aren't just the dollar figure? What were the environmental, what were the social costs around it? And I think there's a lot of people that are increasingly kind of wanting to know about that. And I think we need to keep having that conversation within coffee for sure. Because I don't think that the connection, it's kind of hard. It's hard to demonstrate. If you think about it in cafes in Melbourne, and you've got kind of two general experiences with consuming coffee. You either grab a cup and you're going, or you sit down and you have table service. And I think even in the leading cafes of Australia, the conversation around the coffee and our opportunity to create greater value there is just not happening in a lot of cases. You're like, yeah, I'll have that coffee, and you get just a cup put in front of you. Maybe you get some added information that's plonked in front of you as well, which is definitely a benefit. But in terms of kind of going, hey, this is an exceptional producer, they're doing some really interesting things, and this is why it's going to taste like this, even just to anchor that idea that the cup of coffee has got people and humans and a life kind of behind it is, I think that's what we really need to all kind of focus on doing.
And would you say, because, you know, what you said is obviously we got limits, you know, if someone is in and out, you know, there is the, you know, tasting card or the information, and, you know, maybe people are just scrolling through their, I don't know, Twitter feed or whatever they're looking for,
Yeah.
or they just focus on something else. And we go back to the usual argument, which is you can really connect with that person who wants to connect and talk about coffee and, you know, recipes, and, you know, because those are the people that you really can go double down, because they're willing to, they're open to, rather than forced onto. But would you say that maybe this COVID has taught us all the fact that we had this for the past 5 years was all, you know, for the past 7 years, we could have done this every single day, multiple times a day.
Yeah.
Maybe sort of, you know, where is possible, or, you know, I'm just playing here devil's advocate, but whether it's, you know, whether it's a farmer that has the luxury of the internet connection and have a Zoom, or, I mean, I know that Zoom is not safe or whatever, but you get the picture. A multiple
Sure.
video conference platform,
Yeah.
where those 3, 5, 7, 8, 9 people, it doesn't have to be big, they get to firsthand see it and talk about it more directly. And would that maybe generate a little bit of a ripple effect? And then John and Jennifer will go and say, well, I bought this coffee, but I also had a chance to talk for 25 minutes with the actual person who handpicked the cherries behind coffee. Did you know that coffee beans comes from cherries? And then it may start. Yeah, I think we could take advantage of technology. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, look, I definitely agree. There's some great opportunities there for that. And I mean, I think even if it's not at that extreme of kind of having a live conversation, just, you know, the thing that I feel like we've kind of had this knee-jerk reaction in our coffee service where, you know, probably, I don't know, 5 to 8 years ago, you know, specialty coffee was having this big boom, and you would walk into a cafe or order a single origin and they'd do this data dump on you of like, well, it was grown at these many meters above sea level, it was processed in this way on raised drying beds for X number of days and turned 3 times every 15 minutes for this amount of time, and this is da 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 da, and the consumer is kind of just overwhelmed, and we get kind of a, you know, the reputation of specialty coffee becomes, oh, these coffee wankers. And there isn't, the information isn't delivered with, you know, a goal to actually engage with the consumer. It's just an outpouring of information. And I think that we've kind of, you know, our knee-jerk reaction from the negative reception to that has been to really retract and not offer very much. It's like, it's just coffee. Yeah, it's just coffee. You know, take another cup. But I think that we've got this opportunity to connect real humans to real humans. And whether it's a live 20-minute conversation, or it's just kind of recognizing that, yeah, this was from this particular, you know, community or this particular producer. And this is a little bit about what their life is like. And certainly on a digital platform, being able to share, you know, the people who are involved and have them speak to consumers is a big thing. And we've even been trying to do that. Obviously in COVID, it's kind of been all over the place, but we've, because we couldn't do kind of cuppings and we couldn't do other events and things, we actually did a couple of series of what we just called our Explorers editions. And we've actually did some live events where we brought in, our last one was featuring some coffees out of Uganda, a 3-set that we released, and the crew from Uganda actually dialed in. So we did essentially kind of what you're talking about, is a live kind of conversation about what harvest was like, what is coffee and what is life like in Uganda on Mount Elgon, and tried to paint a bit more of a picture around that. And I think, yeah, that's key. Bring them to the consumers.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And there's no right or wrong. I think it's just a matter of trial and error. It's like it's the same conversation as, okay, we're for how many years have we've done the click grinders, and then they were kind of phased out. I mean, I still see a few around there here and there, but the conversation is around the technology and the system and how to improve and what else. But I think that we haven't done yet this upgrade. Yeah, here's the card, or here's a few information if you want, go and search it. I think actively offering this or community-based events or whatever it is, I think it's key to sort of truly get an involvement. Because I was talking to Smaya from Rwanda, and she was describing how she works very closely with farmers there. She was describing how sometimes even her just saying something that she heard or she read of someone mentioning something about that coffee would just make the farmers weak, And it could have been simple as, hey, someone from Melbourne really enjoyed our coffee, and you make the farmers weak. Let alone could be if there's opportunity to do, what you did with the Uganda producers. It's just incredibly valuable, and it brings humanity at its best, which is the storytelling and the sharing and the connection, which is really what coffee is all about.
Yeah, and I think that's it. Is that there's just that disconnect because of distance. We're drinking a coffee here in Australia. It's hard to kind of visualize and imagine, especially if you've never traveled there. What Tanzania is like, and what is coffee farming really like? What does it even involve? And so, if you can bridge some of that gap with some well-delivered information and create some empathy, then the idea around a supportive value chain where people go, oh, that sounds worthwhile. I'm willing to pay more per cup for that. Then suddenly we have a chain that starts to be able to support and flow up back to the producers.
100%. I mean, and if you look at which I understand that it's much different, but it's when you look at the wine industry, right? It's like they're very famous. The famous bus visits to the vineyards, and producers are like they're present of people even reselling those wines. I know it's difficult because we can't just all hop on a plane. Well, we can't even go to New South Wales now. Let alone to Indonesia. But it's fascinating to me, speaking of Indonesia, and how I always get asked this question often. I don't know why. A lot of my friends ask me if I know luwak coffee, right? And it's such a tourist thing, right? I think if digitally we can offer an output, we did a little virtual tour with Miko Justin of a farm in Bali, mostly where they process the coffee, and it was so interesting because everybody wants to go to origin, but not everyone can go to origin because financials, or if you go a week off, you just want to invest it in a different resort or a different country. That's fine. And I think the digital world can bring us a step closer, just as much as I know that everybody hates and demonizes social media or emails, but then we sort of kind of I like to take 10 steps back and like, okay, would you rather go back at handwritten letters where it takes a month or 2 or 3 to get there, if it gets there? So I think, it will be interesting. I would love to see more of these, actually, thinking about it. And Andrew is saying, beautiful conversation, just reading the label won't make coffee better. It's a nice idea to take the producer to the consumer and making the bridge happen.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential there, and the real need is in who is interacting with the consumer. So yes, on a digital and a take home point of view, we can do this as well, like obviously having these kinds of conversations, but then on the other angle, like all of the baristas who are out there with coffee knowledge and who are interacting in a very human way, one-on-one with a consumer, or the floor staff who are serving out that coffee, and they are the bridge with that. I mean, if you imagine the role of like sommeliers and kind of in the wine world, they're not making any wine there for you. And yes, you might have been to a vineyard before, but they'll be painting a picture and telling you about the winemaking of these, of these wines from Italy or France or Spain or wherever the wine's from. And your experience, if you've ever had that experience, is really great. That you're taken through and you're like, oh yeah, I'll pay a couple of extra dollars for that glass because that sounds really interesting and sounds delicious and I like the idea of it. And so you'll pay that little bit extra. And I think that's where we could follow suit a bit with coffee.
You hit the nail. You hit the nail. I said it maybe it was a month ago. I can't remember who I was talking to, but floor stuff, 100%. I mean, yeah. I've been guilty of it. I need to put my hands up where people ask me about a wine or a coffee, and my answer will be like, oh yeah, it's really nice. So to speak, I really like it.
It's difficult.
But would you say that then, going back on technology, just because we are in it, I also think that could be a potential tool because you can't physically visit every single coffee shop and get everybody onto attention. But
sure.
If there was a sort of, whether it's a portal, whether it's a platform, whether it's something, a private Zoom with, only your, a certain roasters, wholesale customers who are able to jump on and once a month, it's a big catch up or whatever, where you have yourself or Adrian or whoever it is to talk about maybe just one producer for that month. It's interesting. I'm hoping to see, I'm curious to see what's going to be next from everyone's side because, the sustainability of it's definitely, it's a big topic. It's a big topic.
Yeah.
But speaking of big topics, I think that hospitality is far from perfect. What if you could change one thing? What would that be?
Oh, one thing.
Well, if you want to change two.
Well, it's hospitality is a very broad thing as well. If I could change one thing. I mean, I guess it's probably in line with what we're talking about here is, obviously hospitality goes across so many different industries, but for coffee, I think if there's anything that you could like snap your fingers and make it happen overnight would be about getting consumers paying more per cup. And obviously they have to still find value in it and it has to be all good. But if you could make that change straight away and people weren't just competing and up to $1 per cup for every coffee or something like that, I think the ability for that to have a ripple on effect up through sustainability of cafes, being able to hire good staff and then pay more to roasters who can pay more to producers. I think that's really could be the biggest lever, but obviously it doesn't happen overnight. You got to work at that kind of stuff. But if I could, that would be my wish.
Well, that's good. I like this discussion because I think it opens many scenarios. And I mean, of course, it won't happen overnight. And I think that potentially speaking, there might have to be some sort of regulation. I think that at the end of the day, regulations could help because it has in the past. Like different countries have different system measures. Something that I found very different coming from Europe is that here in Australia, there's no a cap on certain type of businesses per streets or per suburbs. When in certain cities in Europe, okay, there's only 10, there's space only for 10 pizza shops within this radius, which is then, you bring down the kind of competition. Obviously, again, there's no perfect world, but I wonder if some sort of regulation could help it. This has been really enlightening and really cool to have you on, and I'm glad that we could so thank you again. I really appreciate your time, and maybe we can have a second episode with Adrian together, maybe doing you know what, maybe we could give the voice to maybe a farmer that you guys been working with for a while and or interesting story or some release that you're doing, and when you're able to go to the academy and maybe we could have a live stream where we talk about that story. There you go. Then let's make that happen. There you go. We talk about it instead of taking action, then we are taking action. And someone saying, Ben's still going strong. Did one of my first courses with him in 2012, I think. There you go. There you go.
Been around, been around.
Been around.
But,
But
well,
just the last question. We'll live 8 minutes, around 8 minutes. What's next for you, and what sort of is your coffee mission? And I know it's a big question. That's why I get some leverage sometime.
yeah, yeah, that is a big question. What's next for me? Well, I mean, obviously, I'm just helping Five Senses however I can, kind of get through this particular stage. You know, personally, kind of there were a bunch of projects. I was hoping to run another Q grader course later in this year, but that doesn't look like it's going to be happening until easily 2021. Who knows what public cuppings are looking like? Um, Look, I think. Yeah, look, I'm just kind of looking forward to helping this communication, you know, that we've been talking about. Like, how do we make sure that we're telling a story that's helps create value and support value for baristas and cafe owners who are serving it out, but also is speaking out something that's I guess a true representation of kind of what is happening for producers and their voice versus just a romanticizing of kind of what's happening at origin and a generalization of it. You know, every place is different, and every kind of person who's behind it is different. So I think I'm really just focusing in on that and exploring how we can do that communication in a better way and how we can support that all the way through the chain. Um, yeah, and then otherwise, kind of just we've got some really great coffees that keep coming out, so it's really just releasing all of those and yeah, hanging on during the weird COVID times.
I know it's I sometimes like I thought about it last night. I was speaking to someone like, and I was making a calculation on what time to go and pick up. I had to work because I couldn't make dinner myself yesterday, and I was like, oh, hang on, I need to kind of hurry up because it's curfew, and it hit me. I was like, wow, like this. But then it's like that word that you put it in. It's all about perspective because there's some people with proper curfews, but they go,
Yeah,
army, military airplanes literally flying in, and it's like, that's like their, like in Melbourne's trams, but that's what they hear every 10, 15, 20 minutes. So I was like, well, it's not that bad. I'm going to pick up some food. I'm pretty
yeah,
lucky. But
yeah,
you're right. Look,
definitely.
it's tricky, and I think mental health, and for people who have the health and obviously the resources, because obviously there's still people struggling even in Australia, but I think that
Sure.
mental health would be a major element to it. Yeah, something to worth talk about.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
yeah, but yeah, that's a big topic again. But
It
your
is a big
challenge,
topic.
your challenge around coffee is something that's really something that I know that you and your team will be able to deliver, and I'm sure that I'm gonna see plenty more from you. And I named him a few times because I'm hoping that he will re-listen to it. I'll message Adrian that he didn't connect a few times. I'm like, hey, where were
We'll
you?
find out.
We'll
He's
find out.
actually helping out our roastery team during these crazy times. So he's been
He's
down.
busy.
He's probably asleep right now because he's been doing such early starts.
Yeah, probably. But Ben, it's been a great pleasure, and I hope to see you soon in real life, face to face, and have
Yeah,
and
definitely.
share a cup of coffee together. But yeah, thank you again for coming in, mate. I will really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was great fun.
Thank you, and let's do again this for the second, the 2.0. Maybe we'll organize something with you and Adrian. Something to think
Sounds good.
about for sure. Love it.
Okay, great. All
Thank you,
right.
brother.
Thank you. See you
Take it
later.
easy, mate.
Bye.
Ciao. There you have it, guys. It was such a enlightening conversation with Ben. It was really great to hear his insights and feedback on what his thoughts were around, coffee values as well as the Melbourne scene. And yeah, very, very nice talking to him. So I hope that you enjoyed it. If you just tuned in, you'll be able to re-listen to this in the form of podcast in a few days, or you'll be able to have a listen to it onto IGTV. Either or, yeah, I was really, really
lucky and I'm grateful that I'm able to speak to people like Ben and, well, Andre is here, and all these amazing people in coffee. Their stories and their insights hopefully help. And that's why we're doing what we're doing. So just if you're new, I would love if you just, reshare this with a friend, take a screenshot, and you're able to share this, so then we can just try to grow this little podcast of ours. If not, that's okay. If you're new or old, something that I want to share with you live, because I'm not sure how many have seen the post, but next Sunday, this Sunday, we're gonna host the first global coffee table. What is it? Basically, imagine a table where, communal table of people drinking and sharing a cup of coffee in a cafe, but we're gonna do it on a Google Meet. So it's like Zoom, and we'll be all together, and we're just gonna introduce each other. It's gonna say your names and where you're from, and it's gonna be very chill, very relaxed, and we're just gonna talk about what coffee you're drinking and how you brew it and where you're from, just to kind of start for the first one. If you're interested in this, just to register, just go onto our website. The link is in bio, and add your email address, so I'll be able to send out the invite for the room, and we'll be all together. So I'm looking forward to it. It sounds, yeah, very excited for, actually. I've been working on it for a few weeks. I really want to make sure that this global coffee table, brewing all together, becomes a thing, maybe to do every couple of weeks, every month, just to grow the coffee community and family, and be there for each other, whether it's you alone at home or whether it's just you hanging out with other coffee cats. But anyway, that's it. That's it from me. Thanks again to all of you guys. Big shout out who's still here, and I'll see you on Thursday for the next episode, I believe. No. Yeah, Thursday, next episode. Otherwise, stay safe and take care.